Hey there, welcome back. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that's causing a stir in the EU, a new regulation. It's aimed at tackling those sneaky climate villains, F-gases, the stuff in refrigerators, air conditioners, even some inhalers. They might not be as well known as CO2, but these F-gases, they pack a serious punch when it comes to global warming.
It's true. We're talking about gases, thousands of times more potent than CO2, trapping heat in the atmosphere.
And here's a fact that might surprise you. While the EU has been making progress cutting other greenhouse gas emissions, F-gas emissions have actually doubled since 1990. So,
why is the EU suddenly cracking down now? What's the big deal?
this new regulation, officially known as Regulation EU 2024-573, it's a direct response to the alarm bells ringing from the world's top climate scientists.
Right.
Remember that 2021 report from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change?
Yeah.
They basically laid out a stark choice. Slash global F-gas emissions dramatically, or face the consequences of a rapidly warming planet. Okay, so the stakes are high, but what does this regulation actually do? Does it just tell everyone to stop using F-gases altogether?
It's more nuanced than that. The EU's aim is to phase down F-gases strategically, using a combination of approaches. They're tightening the reins on leaks, restricting or banning F-gases in certain applications, and even implementing quotas to limit the amount of these gases allowed on the market.
Let's unpack that a bit. First up, containment. What are they doing to prevent those F-gases from leaking out into the atmosphere?
Think of it like a regular checkup for your appliances. The regulation sets out specific frequencies for leak checks, based on how much F-gas the equipment uses. So larger systems with a lot of F-gases need to be checked more often, every 3 months for the big guys. Smaller systems might only need a checkup every 2 years. And if a leak is detected, it can't just be ignored. Proper recovery and destruction of those leach gases are mandatory. No more venting them carelessly into the air.
Got it. So regular checkups and responsible handling of leaks are key. But what about those restrictions and bans? Which applications are on the chopping block?
The list is pretty extensive. Some types of air conditioners, fire protection equipment, and even vehicle tires are being phased out. One of the most impactful examples is the ban on new split air conditioners using certain F-gases. With a high global warming potential, that's the measure of how much gas contributes to global warming compared to CO2. This ban kicks in as early as 2025.
Wow, 2025 is right around the corner. So if you're thinking about getting a new AC unit, you might want to pay close attention to the label and make sure it's compliant with the new regulations.
Exactly. And it's not just outright bans. The EU is also using a more gradual approach with something called quotas.
Okay, quotas. Break that down for me. How does that work?
Essentially, they're implementing a quota system to gradually reduce the amount of hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, a very common type of F-gas, that are allowed on the market.
So instead of an immediate ban, it's like slowly turning off the tap.
That's a good way to put it. By 2024, producers of HFCs will only be allowed to supply 45% of what they were putting on the market back in 2011-2013. And get this, by 2036, that number drops to just 15%. Imagine the supply of these common F-gases being slashed by over 85% in just a little over a decade. It's a clear sign that the EU is serious about pushing industries to find alternatives.
That is a drastic reduction. It sounds like a major shakeup for those industries. But it's not just about what's happening within the EU's borders, right? They're also looking to influence the global scene.
You're absolutely right. The EU is aligning its actions with the Kigali Amendment, a global agreement to phase down HFCs. They're even taking it a step further. Starting in 2025, they're banning exports of certain types of equipment that contain F-gases. It's a bold move and a clear signal that they want to be a leader in tackling this global challenge.
And they're putting some serious muscle behind these measures. What about enforcement? How are they making sure everyone plays by the rules?
With restrictions this tight, it's almost inevitable that some folks will try to game the system right. But the EU is wise to that. They've got some serious teeth in this regulation to go after anyone trying to cheat. We're talking hefty penalties, up to 5 times the market value of the illegally traded gases or equipment. That's a strong deterrent.
Okay, so we've got containment through leak checks and recovery, restrictions and bans on certain applications, and quotas to gradually reduce the supply of HFCs, plus some serious enforcement mechanisms to keep everyone in line. It definitely paints a picture of a determined EU, taking a multi-pronged approach to tackling F-gases. But let's dive into some specific examples. I was reading about the use of sulfur hexafluoride, or SF6, in magnesium die casting. Why is this particular use being singled out?
Well, SF6 is a particularly potent greenhouse gas, even compared to other F-gases. Its global warming potential is a whopping 24,300. That means releasing just a tiny amount of SF6 is like releasing a huge amount of CO2. So even small leaks can have a significant impact. While SF6 is used in various applications, the EU has determined that its use in magnesium die casting is unnecessary and can be replaced with alternative technologies. It's a targeted approach to reducing emissions where it's most feasible.
So it's about picking battles and focusing on areas where alternatives are readily available. Makes sense. Now, another detail that caught my eye was the section on desflurane. It's a powerful anesthetic used in some medical procedures, but the regulation places restrictions on its use. Why is that? Isn't it important to have access to the most effective anesthetics?
It is absolutely. Patient safety is paramount. But here's the catch. Desflurane is also a potent greenhouse gas with a global warming potential of over 7,000. So the regulation tries to strike a balance. It emphasizes that desflurane should only be used when absolutely necessary, for medical reasons, and when other, less climate-damaging alternatives aren't suitable.
So it's about weighing those benefits and risks carefully. And when desflurane is used, are there any measures to minimize its release into the atmosphere?
Absolutely. The regulation requires that desflurane be captured and properly disposed of to prevent it from escaping into the environment. Healthcare institutions even have to keep records to justify its use. It's not an outright ban, but it's carefully controlled.
Makes sense. Now, speaking of medical applications, what about metered-dose inhalers? Many people rely on those for their health, and they often use HFCs as propellants. How will this regulation impact those?
That's a valid concern, and the regulation addresses it directly. Metered-dose inhalers are included in the overall HFC quota system, but to avoid any sudden disruptions in access for patients, manufacturers of these inhalers will get their full quota based on their recent market share. For the period from 2025 to 2026, they'll only reach the full reduction rate, the same as other sectors, in 2030.
So a bit of breathing room for that sector, literally and figuratively. It sounds like they're trying to ensure that patient needs are met while still pushing for those environmental goals. But what about those situations where companies might genuinely need to use F-gases, even if there are general restrictions in place? Are there any exceptions?
Yes, there are provisions for exemptions, but they're not handed out easily. Companies have to jump through some hoops. They need to demonstrate that there are no suitable alternatives available, or that using alternatives would be technically or safety-wise unfeasible, or that it would lead to disproportionately high costs.
So it's not a free pass. They really have to make a strong case for why they need that exemption. It sounds like the EU is trying to cover all the bases with this regulation, balancing those environmental goals with practical considerations and the needs of various industries.
That's right. And we're just scratching the surface here. This regulation has far-reaching implications, and we're going to explore them in more detail in the rest of this deep dive.
Okay, so we've established that the EU is getting serious about phasing down F-gases, but that begs the question, what are the alternatives? If industries can't rely on these potent greenhouse gases, what will they use instead?
Well, it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. The alternatives depend on the specific application. Take refrigeration, for example. Natural refrigerants like hydrocarbons, think propane and isobutane, are gaining traction. You might be surprised to learn that some refrigerators already use these natural alternatives.
Wait, propane and isobutane, aren't those flammable? That seems a little risky, doesn't it?
It's a valid concern. But the good news is that safety standards and regulations have evolved to ensure those risks are minimized. Manufacturers are designing systems that prioritize safe handling and operation. It's all about mitigating those risks through smart engineering.
So it's like, we're not going back to the days of exploding refrigerators, thankfully. But what about air conditioning? One of the biggest culprits when it comes to F-gas emissions. What are the options there?
There are some exciting developments in that area. One alternative that's gaining momentum is using carbon dioxide as a refrigerant. I know, it sounds counterintuitive, using a greenhouse gas to combat climate change.
Right.
But when CO2 is used in a closed-loop system, its overall climate impact is significantly lower than those potent HFCs we talked about earlier.
So it's like using a little bit of CO2.
Yeah.
To avoid releasing a lot of something much worse.
Interesting. I've also heard about something called HFOs. Hydrofluorofans. Are those a viable alternative to F-gases? Think of HFOs as the up-and-coming star in the world of refrigerants. They have a very low global warming potential and are already being adopted in various applications, including those new car AC systems you might have seen advertised.
So HFOs sound promising, but are there any downsides? Nothing's perfect, right?
You're right to be cautious. Scientists are still doing their homework on HFOs, looking into their potential breakdown products in the environment, We need to make sure they don't have any hidden environmental downsides. It's always better to be safe than sorry, especially when it comes to introducing new chemicals into the environment.
Absolutely. It sounds like a constant process of weighing those pros and cons, finding the best solution for each specific use case.
Exactly. And that's why this EU regulation is so important. It's creating a powerful incentive for innovation, pushing industries to invest in research and development of climate-friendlier solutions. It's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
I'm thinking back to when CFCs, those ozone-depleting chemicals, were phased out. That led to a wave of innovation in the refrigeration and aerosol industries. It seems like history might be repeating itself, but this time it's about tackling climate change.
You're spot on, and this time the stakes are even higher. We're talking about the future of our planet. But with challenges come opportunities. This is a chance for businesses to not just comply with regulations, but to truly lead the way in a green technological revolution.
So it's not just about avoiding penalties, it's about gaining a competitive edge by developing and adopting these sustainable technologies.
Precisely. And it's not just about companies, it's about individuals too.
Yeah.
As consumers, we have a powerful voice. We can support companies that are making those climate-friendly choices, choose products that align with our values, and spread awareness about the importance of phasing down F-gases. It's a collective effort, and every action counts.
I like that. Thinking beyond just regulations and seeing the bigger picture. But let's be realistic. Phasing out F-gases is a complex endeavor. Are there any potential downsides or unintended consequences we should be thinking about?
That's a great question. And it's important to consider all angles. One concern is that a rapid transition to alternatives might lead to a shortage of qualified technicians who can install and maintain these new systems. It's one thing to develop new technology, but we also need to ensure we have a skilled workforce ready to handle it.
So it's about investing not just in research and development, but also in training and education.
Absolutely. Governments and industry need to collaborate on robust training programs to equip technicians with the knowledge and skills to work with these new technologies safely and effectively.
What about the environmental impact of the alternatives themselves? I've heard some concerns that while they might have a lower global warming potential, they might have other environmental impacts we don't fully understand yet.
You raise a valid point. It's crucial to avoid jumping from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. We need to be cautious and conduct thorough assessments of any new technology before widespread adoption. It's not just about focusing on one environmental parameter. It's about taking a holistic view and considering the full life cycle impact.
So transparency and ongoing research are key. We need to keep learning and adapting as we go.
Exactly. It's an ongoing process of improvement, constantly evaluating and refining our solutions. But I'm optimistic. With this commitment to innovation and a willingness to learn from our experiences, I believe we can navigate this transition successfully and create a more sustainable future.
This is all very encouraging, but it also makes me wonder who might get left behind in this transition. Not everyone has the resources to adopt these new technologies right away.
That's a crucial consideration. As with any major shift, there's a risk that some businesses, especially smaller ones, might struggle to keep up. The costs associated with adopting these new alternatives can be significant.
So what can be done to ensure a just and equitable transition, where everyone benefits from these advancements, not just those who can afford it?
Policymakers have a crucial role to play here. They need to consider the potential impacts on different groups and provide support where needed. Think financial incentives for businesses to adopt those cleaner technologies, technical assistance to help them navigate the changes, and targeted training programs to upskill workers. It's about creating a level playing field and ensuring that no one is left behind in this journey toward a more sustainable future.
And it's not just about businesses, right? We need to make sure that these new climate-friendly technologies are accessible and affordable for everyone, not just a privileged few. It's about ensuring that the benefits of this transition are shared fairly.
I couldn't agree more. We need to be mindful of those potential equity issues and design solutions that are inclusive and benefit all segments of society. It's about creating a future that is not just sustainable from an environmental standpoint, but also from a social and economic one.
That's a great point. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we implement it, how we ensure fairness and accessibility for everyone.
Exactly. It's about taking a holistic approach, considering the social and economic impacts alongside the environmental ones. It's about creating a future that is truly sustainable in the broadest sense of the word. A future where we don't have to choose between our comfort and the health of the planet.
Well said. This deep dive into the EU's new F-gas regulation has been fascinating. We've gone beyond just the technical details and explored the broader context, the potential benefits, and the challenges that lie ahead. It's a complex issue with ripple effects that extend far beyond the EU's borders.
It's been a great discussion. And it highlights how interconnected these issues are. Climate change, technology, policy, social equity, it's all intertwined.
And it underscores the need for informed and engaged citizens who can participate in these conversations and help shape the future we want to see.
Absolutely. This regulation is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a significant one. And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more sustainable future.
So what are your final thoughts for our listeners today? What should they take away from this deep dive into the world of F-gases and the EU's efforts to phase them down?
I would say, don't underestimate the power of individual action. Yes, we need strong policies and regulations to drive change at a larger scale, but each one of us can make a difference in our own lives. We can support businesses that are leading the way in sustainable solutions, choose products that are more climate-friendly, and spread awareness about the importance of phasing down F-gases. We can be the change we want to see in the world.
You know, it's inspiring to see this kind of action being taken to address a serious environmental challenge. It gives me hope that we can create a future where we don't have to choose between our comfort and the health of the planet.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Finding solutions that benefit both people and the environment. And with the momentum we're seeing, I believe it's achievable.
I'm curious about something. We've talked about the EU leading the charge on phasing down F-gases, but what about the rest of the world? Will this EU regulation have any impact beyond its own borders?
It's a great question, and I think the impact will be significant. The EU is a major player in the global market. When they set ambitious standards like this, it often creates a ripple effect. Other countries and regions may follow suit, adopting similar regulations to stay competitive and keep pace with technological advancements.
So it's like setting a precedent, raising the bar for everyone.
Exactly. And businesses that are already ahead of the curve, those that have invested in F-gas alternatives, will have a competitive advantage in the global marketplace.
That makes sense. It's like a win-win. Good for the environment and good for business. But thinking even broader, how might this shift away from F-gases influence innovation in other areas? Could it lead to breakthroughs in other fields?
Absolutely. Innovation often has a domino effect. When you push for solutions in one area, it can spark creativity and advancements in other unexpected areas. For example, the research and development of new refrigerants might lead to breakthroughs in material science or energy efficiency, with applications far beyond just cooling systems.
So it's like a catalyst, pushing us to think outside the box and come up with solutions we might not have even imagined before.
Precisely. And who knows what those solutions might be? Maybe we'll discover entirely new ways to cool our homes and vehicles, or perhaps even develop technologies that capture and utilize those potent greenhouse gases, turning a problem into a resource.
Now that's some thought-provoking stuff. It's exciting to think about the possibilities that this transition might unlock.
It is, and that's what I find so fascinating about this whole topic. It's not just about reducing our impact on the planet. It's about pushing the boundaries of human ingenuity, creating a more sustainable and ultimately more prosperous future for everyone.
Well said. This deep dive into the EU's new F-gas regulation has been truly eye-opening. We've covered a lot of ground, from the science behind these potent greenhouse gases to the policy measures aimed at phasing them down, and even the broader implications for innovation and the global economy.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you, and I hope our listeners have gained a deeper understanding of this complex issue and the exciting possibilities that lie ahead as we transition to a more sustainable future.
I hope so too. And for those of you listening, we encourage you to continue exploring this topic, dig deeper into the regulation, learn more about the alternatives to F-gases, and consider how this global shift might impact your own lives. Share what you learn with your friends, family, and colleagues. Let's keep this conversation going.
And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together. Through our choices and